My sister didn't invite me to her wedding because I'm adopted. Now, my parents are asking me to be the bigger person and help pay off her wedding debts. I'm Sydney, 27, living a life I've built with my own hands, supported by my amazing fiancé, Luke. My life now is stable and happy. But if you're wondering about my family, well, let's just say things are messy. And they're the reason I'm here, sharing my story and seeking your advice. Let me give you some context before diving into the heart of this issue. I was adopted by the Hansons after they struggled to have biological children. From an early age, it was clear I wasn't truly wanted for who I was. I was just a solution to fill the void left by their infertility. Don't get me wrong, I'm not ungrateful. I'll always appreciate the opportunities they gave me, a life better than what I would have had in the orphanage. But looking back, it wasn't all that different. For the first few years, things were fine, decent even. I wasn't spoiled or showered with affection, but I also wasn't completely neglected. That small dose of love felt like a lot to me, especially compared to the orphanage. I was content with what I had, grateful for the little bits of warmth they offered. But as time went on, the cracks in our relationship became impossible to ignore. Everything changed when I was about 4. My mom, against all odds, became pregnant, and from that moment, my world turned upside down. I don't remember the exact day it started, but it felt like I vanished overnight. Suddenly, all their attention was on the baby, my little sister Janice. At first, I was excited to be an older sister, but as soon as Janice was born, it felt like I didn't exist anymore. It hurt, a lot. They never outright said it, but it was clear I was no longer wanted. I went from being their child to feeling like a placeholder, a temporary fix for their sadness until Janice arrived. Suddenly, I wasn't their daughter. I was their mistake, the unwanted reminder of what they'd been through. For a little girl who just wanted love and belonging, it was crushing. I kept trying to hold on, to make things better, but the harder I tried, the more they pushed me away. They didn't mistreat me physically or stop taking care of my basic needs. They paid for my clothes, food, and school, but it was obvious they did it out of obligation, not love. They didn't have to say or do much to leave scars. The indifference and emotional neglect were enough to make me feel invisible. It's something I still carry with me. Even Janice, the sister I had once been so excited about, never saw me as family. She was a baby when she entered my life, but as she grew, her indifference was as clear as my parents'. She barely acknowledged me, and when she did, it was with the cold detachment you might show a stranger. Growing up like that, feeling like a burden, like no one cared whether I existed, was exhausting. By the time I was a teenager, I'd started pulling away from them. It was easier to be distant, to surround myself with friends who made me feel like I mattered, even if just a little. My parents didn't seem to notice or care that I wasn't around much. Sometimes I wondered if it would have been better if they'd never adopted me at all. It felt like they brought me into their lives just to ignore me, and that realization hurt more than words can explain. I'm not sure what's worse, having no family or having one that couldn't care less if you exist. For me, the latter was far more painful. Growing up in the shadow of indifference, feeling unwanted every day, was its own kind of hell. So when I turned 18, I left. I didn't cut ties completely, we still talk occasionally, but I made sure to create some distance. Fast forward to today, I live in another city with my fiancé, Luke. Life is good. I've built something I'm proud of. I'm independent, happy, and in a loving relationship with someone who's given me the care and affection I've craved my entire life. Luke has been my rock since we started dating 2 years ago. I still visit my parents during the holidays and exchange a few phone calls now and then, but I keep them at arm's length. I've made peace with that. But making peace doesn't erase the scars. The void they left in my heart is still there, which is why I'm here, spilling my feelings to strangers about a family that never gave me the love I needed. Recently, things took an unexpected turn. My younger sister, Janice, got engaged to a guy named Peter, and suddenly my family is reaching out to me. They want my help with the wedding. My parents sent me messages asking if I'd pitch in with the planning and maybe even attend. They framed it as a family matter, insisting it wouldn't feel right without me. Janice hasn't said much, she's barely acknowledged me, but my parents seem unusually persistent. They're painting this picture of unity, like we're all one big happy family rallying around Janice for her big day. I'm torn. How can the same people who made me feel like an outsider my entire life expect me to suddenly play the role of a supportive sister? Janice and I haven't had a meaningful conversation since we were kids. She's shown no interest in me as a sister, and now I'm supposed to pretend everything is fine, as if the years of neglect and hurt never happened. It's not just the hypocrisy that bothers me, it's the risk. I've spent years protecting myself from the damage they caused. Getting involved feels like reopening old wounds I worked hard to heal. So here I am, trying to decide, do I step into this family moment and risk the pain, or do I stay in the life I've built, where I've finally found peace? On the other hand, Janice is my sister, even if we've never truly bonded. Part of me wonders if this is her way, conscious or not, of reaching out, trying to build a connection. Maybe this is the chance I've been waiting for to create the family I've always longed for. Maybe this is how I can finally fill that emptiness in my heart. And that's why I'm stuck. I need your advice. Should I step in, help with the wedding, and see this as an opportunity to mend things? Or should I stick to what I know and keep protecting myself? Luke, as always, has been incredibly supportive. He thinks I should do what feels right, help if I want to, but only if I'm comfortable. He sees it as a possible way to reconnect, but he understands why I'm hesitant. The truth is, I'm torn. Part of me wants to believe this could be the start of something better, but another part remembers all the times I've been let down. So, I'm asking for your advice. Should I give this a shot or keep my distance? Please, help me figure this out. Update. It's been a few weeks since I first posted, and I really wanted to come back here with good news. I wanted to say that I took the chance, and things worked out, that I finally felt like I belonged. But as I sit here, furious and venting to strangers, I realize I was an idiot. I don't even know why I let myself get caught up in this toxic cycle again. Maybe deep down, I was desperate to believe that my family finally cared, that they'd recognized my worth, and that we could start fixing things. Spoiler alert, they didn't. After reading your comments, I spent days thinking it over. Some of you were understanding and encouraged me to give it a try. Others were blunt, calling me foolish for even considering it. I wish I'd listened to those people. But no, I convinced myself that this time would be different. I thought that if they were reaching out, there had to be some sincerity behind it, some desire to reconnect. I was wrong. Completely, painfully wrong. Here's what happened. What made me so furious, I can't think of anything else but venting. After I told my parents I'd help with the wedding preparations, things seemed to go surprisingly well, at least at first. My parents were more considerate than they'd ever been in my life. My mom even hugged me when I agreed to help, and considering I can't even remember the last time she did that, it hit me hard. I'd been craving that kind of affection for so long. Emotionally, I let my guard down. Foolish, I know. I started to believe they were genuinely trying to make up for all the neglect over the years. For a while, everything felt different. As the plans moved forward, Janice and I grew closer in a way we never had before. It felt like she finally saw me as her sister. For the first time, I felt included. It was something I had always wanted, and it felt good, until things started to feel off. Janice began asking me for money. At first, it was small stuff, extra for decorations, a deposit for the venue. She made it sound urgent, like there was no other way to keep the plans on track without my help. She promised it was just a short-term issue and that she'd pay me back soon. I didn't think much of it at first. I have a stable financial situation, and helping her didn't seem like a big deal. But even then, something in the back of my mind felt uneasy. Still, every time I started to doubt her intentions, Janice turned on the charm. She'd assure me it was temporary, that she was grateful for my support, and that she truly wanted me to be part of her big day. And honestly, after years of feeling like an outsider, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to feel like the older sister I had always dreamed of being. I almost hate to admit how much I longed for that connection. So, yes, I made some big payments. Financially, it didn't hurt me much, but emotionally, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. Even as I wrote the checks and transferred the funds, I kept wondering if this newfound family bond was real, or just another way to use me. I decided to go ahead, thinking I was helping my family and doing my part for my little sister's wedding. Most of the preparations were already done when, the next day, Janice dropped a bombshell. She told me I couldn't attend the wedding. After everything I'd done to make her big day perfect, she said it wouldn't be appropriate because the event was for blood family only. I was stunned. It felt like a lightning bolt had struck me, leaving me frozen, struggling to process her words. Blood family only, as if I hadn't been there for her from the start, as if it wasn't me who had just saved her wedding from financial disaster. The words hit me harder than I expected, dragging up all the childhood insecurities I thought I'd buried. In that moment, it became painfully clear they never wanted to fix things with me or reconnect. They only wanted to use me. And now that they'd gotten what they wanted, they were discarding me like I meant nothing. They'd always been this way, and I had been naive to think this time was any different. I let them manipulate me, allowed myself to believe in some ridiculous fairy tale where they finally saw me as part of the family. But no, I was the fool, the idiot who let her guard down, only to be tossed aside once they got what they needed. I didn't say a word. I didn't yell, cry, or even argue. I just walked out. I didn't look back at Janice or my parents. I left them and their betrayal behind. My anger was a storm, swirling between fury at them and frustration with myself. How could I have let this happen? I knew better. My instincts had warned me, but I ignored them, chasing a fantasy of belonging. But let me tell you something. This was the end. Completely, absolutely the end. I'm done with them. Their lies, their neglect, and their constant manipulation. They only remember me when they need something, and I'm not playing their game anymore. Now, I'm planning something. I don't know how it'll play out yet, but they won't get away with this. They think they can use me and move on as if nothing happened. Not this time. They'll have to face the consequences, and I'll make sure of it. I'll update you once I've executed my plan. Until then, goodbye. Update 2. A few days have passed since my last update, and let's just say karma finally decided to make an appearance. The wedding happened recently, and my phone hasn't stopped buzzing since. Guess who's calling? My parents. Not to apologize, not to acknowledge how wrong Janice was, but to blame me. Apparently, Janice is drowning in debt, and somehow, it's all my fault. Remember when I mentioned I was planning something after the whole blood family only fiasco? Well, here's what I did. I decided that if Janice wanted to use me and toss me aside, she'd have to face the consequences. After calming down and thinking it through, I went ahead and canceled every single reservation I had made for her wedding. Deposits, payments, everything I could pull back. Most of the money was refunded, though I lost some due to non-refundable fees. But honestly, I didn't care. It was a small price to pay to make sure Janice realized actions have consequences. Once I pulled out, the wedding started to fall apart. The carefully curated plans unraveled like a thread in a cheap sweater. Janice panicked, scrambling to fix everything at the last minute. Since she was in such a rush, she ended up paying way more than I ever had. Desperate to keep her perfect day intact, she took out a massive loan to cover the extra costs. Now she's buried in debt, all because she thought she could use me and get away with it. And the wedding itself? Well, it happened, but it was far from the dream wedding she had envisioned. From what I've heard, it was chaotic, rushed, and nowhere near as polished as the event I'd been helping her plan. While it wasn't a complete disaster, it was a far cry from the flawless day she'd imagined. Guests noticed the mess, and Janice was reportedly mortified. So here I am, watching everything unfold, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and closure. Actions have consequences, and now Janice and my parents are learning that the hard way. In the end, Janice got married. That's what counts, I guess. Though now she's buried in debt, and my parents won't stop calling me, trying to guilt-trip me into helping her. Their pitch? That, as the older sister, it's my duty to take care of her. Seriously, where was this sense of responsibility for family when I wasn't even invited to the wedding? Oh, right, I'm not blood. The nerve of it all. They even had the audacity to tell me to let the past go and be the bigger person. My response? I calmly told them they're here to be used whenever it's convenient. Janice got herself into this mess, and if she thought she could manipulate me without consequences, she was wrong. I added, just for emphasis, that they should go ask a blood relative for help. Then I hung up. Honestly, it felt amazing to finally stand my ground. For so long, I was the outsider, the forgotten one, only acknowledged when they needed something from me. But now they know I'm done tolerating their toxic behavior. Janice can deal with her pile of debt, and my parents can face the mess they helped create. It's no longer my problem. So that's where my story ends, or so I thought. For the first time in years, I feel a sense of peace. I'm finally focusing on my own life and enjoying it with my fiancé, Luke. Sure, my phone still buzzes constantly with their calls, but thankfully there's a block button for that. Thank you all for the support through this roller coaster. It truly helped me find clarity and strength. After I refused to help Janice, she must have been seething with rage, convinced I was the reason for her mess. So, in her twisted logic, she decided to escalate things and try to hurt me even more. Her attempt at revenge? Honestly, it's almost laughable how badly it backfired. Here's what went down. A few days after I turned her down, Janice sent a series of fake photos to my fiancé, Luke. She claimed she'd seen me cheating on him the night before and was heartbroken by my behavior. She even went so far as to tell him how ashamed she was to have a sister who could do something so despicable. She didn't stop there. She added some ridiculous story about how she'd always wanted the best for me but couldn't just sit back and watch me betray him. All of this just to get back at me for her own failures. But here's the thing. Janice clearly underestimated my relationship with Luke. She had no idea about the trust and bond we share. As soon as Luke received her message, he came straight to me, not because he believed her nonsense, but because it was so blatantly absurd. The moment he showed me the photos, we couldn't help but laugh. Why? Because the night Janice claimed to have caught me cheating, I hadn't even left the house. Luke and I were home all night watching movies together. It wasn't just a bad lie, it was outright pathetic. So we did the only thing that made sense. We laughed. We laughed at the absurdity of her accusations, at her desperation to drag me into her chaos. But as the laughter faded, a wave of anger bubbled up inside me. Janice wasn't just being petty, she was trying to destroy the one truly good thing in my life. And that was crossing a line. In that moment, I knew I couldn't let her get away with this. She'd gone too far, and it was time to put her in her place. Don't get me wrong, I hadn't planned on taking things further after walking away from my family. But Janice pushed me to the edge, and now she had to face the consequences of her actions. She left me no choice. Here's the thing. During the wedding preparations, I saw something that I've kept to myself until now. I saw Janice kissing another man. Yes, you heard that right. She was kissing someone who wasn't her husband. I even took pictures, not because I wanted to ruin her wedding or future marriage, but because something felt off. I didn't say anything at the time. I told myself it wasn't my business. But now, after everything she's tried to do to sabotage my relationship, why should I care about her wedding, right? So I did what I felt I had to do. I sent those photos to her husband, Peter, and told him the truth. Peter didn't waste a second before acting. By the end of the day, Janice was out of the house, and Peter filed for divorce, or annulment, I'm not sure. But either way, they're done. Look, I'm not proud of it, but Janice gave me no choice. She was the one who started this whole mess, and I just ended it. Now she's facing the consequences. She's practically ruined, trying to move back in with my parents, but they won't have her. They don't want to get stuck paying off her mountain of debts. And since she doesn't work, they know they'd end up footing the bill. They want nothing to do with her disaster. So where is Janice now? I have no clue. She's probably out on the streets, looking for someone else to take her in, completely unaware of the mess she's in. But honestly, I don't care. She wanted to play with fire, and I gave her a dose of napalm. Update 4. First off, I want to make something clear. Janice may have learned a harsh lesson about messing with me, but that doesn't mean she's learned how to behave with anyone else. Her ability to get into trouble seems limitless. Now, after everything that happened with her marriage, she's decided to target our parents. No longer me, but them. After Peter left her, Janice realized just how deep in trouble she really was. She's buried in the wedding debt and needs to find a job, fast, to even keep herself afloat. For years, she lived in the comfort of never having to worry about things like money or work. My parents, or her husband, always took care of that. But now that she's lost both of their support, she's facing a reality she never imagined she'd have to deal with. And this is where it gets even more ridiculous. Instead of taking responsibility for her own mess, Janice decided to sue my parents. Yes, you read that right. She's suing them. And the reason is so absurd that you'll either laugh or be outraged depending on how you look at it. According to Janice, my parents should have paid for the entire wedding because as her biological parents, they were obligated to do so. Her logic? Since they had her after years of infertility, everything related to her happiness, like her wedding, should be their responsibility. I know it sounds completely out of touch, but in her mind, this is a genius plan. She's convinced that my parents somehow forced her to borrow money for the wedding, and now she's in debt because of it. So she's suing them to get that money back, as if they're responsible for the disaster she created. I can only imagine the judge's reaction when reading her claim. I'd love to be there just to see his face as he deals with this family circus. Honestly, I can't see anything but a suppressed laugh at the absurdity of the case. Janice was the one getting married, not my parents. She was the one who wanted an extravagant wedding, so it was on her to pay for it, or at least make smarter choices. Let's not even get started on the fact that if she hadn't cheated on her husband, she probably wouldn't be in this mess in the first place. But in Janice's world, everyone is responsible for her decisions, except for her. What makes this even more ironic is that Janice isn't just asking me to help pay off her wedding debt. No, she's also demanding that my parents remove me from their will. At this point, I couldn't care less about that. Honestly, I don't want anything from this family. I've worked hard to build my own life, and I'm happier without this chaos. So, here I am, watching Janice sink deeper and deeper into her own problems, dragging everyone around her down with her. The only thing I can think is, thank God I'm not part of this circus. It's like I'm watching from the outside, while the monkeys run around making a mess. I don't feel like I need to update you, but people have asked, and let's just say Janice's lawsuit went absolutely nowhere. The result? It was pretty obvious from the start.